This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudzda to get you 5% off anything on the site. You can also use the promo code MTGMudzda for 5% off your orders from Face to Face Games, Canada's largest Magic the Gathering store, with qualified orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, I just wanted to let you know that for the next month, I've teamed up with the awesome crew over at cardtrader.com. What is CardTrader, you're asking? It's an online marketplace where individuals and stores around the world can list their cards for sale. Chances are if you're looking for it, they've got it. With an easy to navigate and user-friendly web space, you'll be able to find what you need in no time. Plus, they offer an amazing service called Card Trader Zero, which makes getting your cards from various countries even simpler. For example, I can order a breeding pool from Italy, a dark ritual from Finland, and a reanimate from the UK. They're all then sent to a central hub nearest you for only a small fee, packaged all together, and then shipped your way in one easy shipment. They've also got an optimized shopper to help you find the best possible prices on the card you want. Simply put, if you want to save yourself a headache, use CardTrader. It lets you support local game stores across Europe, save on cards, and save on shipping. If you're interested in checking it out, be sure to sign up with my referral code shown here and in the video description below. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game finds us back at Kessel Run Games, with Dominic playing his Phylath deck, keeping a Forest, Cinder Glades, Wooded Foothills, Lotus Cobra, Rampant Growth, Gruul Signet, and Harvest Season. Shane is back playing Donal, keeping Mystic Remora, Shrieking Drake, Arcane Signet, Warden of Evos Isles, Twinning Staff, and 2 islands. David is playing Ghired, keeping Rampant Growth, Samut Tyrant Smasher, Myriad Landscape, Terramorphic Expanse, Sensei's Divining Top, Naya Charm, and a Plains. Chris is playing his Kalamax deck, keeping a Holdout Settlement, Island, Forest, Mountain, Springleaf Drum, Thirst for Discovery, and Magma Opus. David wins the die roll and starts us off. He plays a Plains and casts Sensei's Divining Top. Chris draws, playing an Island, and casts Springleaf Drum. Dominic just plays a Tap Cinder Glade. Shane has an Island for turn and casts Mystic Remora. David plays a Sungrass Prairie and casts Rampant Growth, feeding the fish. David goes to grab a mountain and passes. Chris draws, plays a forest, and passes. Dominic has a mountain for turn and casts Lotus Cobra. On Shane's upkeep, he pays for the Remora cumulative upkeep and draws. He plays an island and passes back to David. David has a Myriad Landscape which comes in tapped, and he casts Samut Tyrant Smasher, not paying the 4 and feeding the fish once more, and ships the turn to Chris. Chris draws and plays a Forest. He casts Thirst for Discovery, not paying for the Remora trigger. He discards a basic to it and passes turn. Dominic draws and plays a Forest, making a mana from the Lotus Cobra trigger. He then casts an Arcane Signet into a Rampant Growth, and Shane nets 2 more cards. Dominic then moves to combat, hitting Shane with the Cobra, and passes turn. Shane decides not to pay for the Remora trigger on his upkeep, and just moves to draw. He plays a Cephalid Colosseum, and then casts his own Arcane Signet. He then moves to his discard phase, pitching down to 7 and passing. David draws and plays a Sunbaked Canyon. He uses it, taking 1 to help cast Ghired. As his commander comes in, he makes a 4/4 Rhino token, and then moves to combat. His creatures have haste, and he swings Ghired at Dominic, and the Rhino at Shane. With Ghired attacking, he gets to populate a Rhino token that's attacking Chris, and they all take their hits, with Dominic taking 2 commander damage. After that, David passes turn. Chris draws and plays a mountain. He just casts Kalamax and passes to Dominic. Dominic plays a Wooded Foothills, making a mana from the Cobra, and then casts Phylath. He makes 3 plants off the trigger and goes to attack. He swings the Cobra at Shane, dealing 2, and after that passes turn. Shane draws for turn and casts Donal, taking one from the Cephalid Coliseum. With nothing else, he passes back to David. David draws and moves straight to combat. He swings Ghired at Shane, the 2 rhinos at Chris, and since he's attacking, gets to populate a rhino token, sending it at Shane as well. Chris blocks a rhino with Kalamax and then taps it with the Springleaf Drum to help cast a copy of Brainstorm, giving Kalamax a +1/+1 counter and getting a copy of it. The dinosaur then eats the rhino, and Shane and Chris take the rest of the damage, with Shane taking 2 commander damage. In his second main phase, David sacrifices the Myriad Landscape, going to find 2 basics, and then plays a Selesnya Sanctuary, bouncing one of the basics back to his hand, and passes to Chris. Chris plays a Holdout Settlement, and then pays 2 for a Simic Signet. He casts a Kadama's Reach, going to find a basic for hand, and a basic for the field. Dominic draws, and plays a Mountain, making a mana from the Cobra, and using it to help cast Ruby Medallion. Unfortunately, he forgets his Phylath trigger, and he moves to combat. He swings all of his creatures at David, dealing a total of 7 while his defenses are down. 5 of this is commander damage. After combat, he casts Harvest Season to go and find 5 basic lands, which gets him 5 Phylath triggers, and he puts 8 counters onto one plant token and 12 onto another. Dominic also gets 5 Lotus Cobra triggers, and uses the mana to cast a Pyromancer's Goggles and passes turn. Shane plays an island for turn, and casts a Warden of Evos Isles, making a spirit copy of it because of Donal. After that, he passes, and David loses 1 life tapping the Sunbaked Canyon to activate his Sensei's Divining Top. David draws and plays a Mountain. Moving to combat, he swings everything at Dominic, populating a Rhino, which also goes at him. Dominic takes a total of 14, 2 of which is from Ghired, and after that, David passes. Chris has a Mountain for turn, and casts a Reclamation Sage, destroying the Pyromancer's Goggles. Chris follows up with a Twinning Staff, and then ships the turn to Dominic. Dominic draws and plays Explosive Vegetation. Chris responds by tapping Kalamax, and then casts Snap. He bounces Phylath and the 2 plant tokens thanks to Snap and the copies. Dominic does get to go and find his lands though, and does make 2 mana from the Lotus Cobra. He then uses some of that to help recast Phylath. Phylath's trigger goes on the stack, and Shane responds by casting an Overcharged Amalgam, exploiting the copy made by Donal. He takes 1 from tapping the Cephalid Coliseum, but is able to stifle the Enter the Battlefield trigger. Dominic then cracks the Wooded Foothills, losing 1 to get a Forest, and with his commander out gets to put 4 +1/+1 counters onto a plant token. He then casts Surged Victory, exiling Explosive Vegetation to it. Moving to combat, he swings the Cobra and plant token at David. David responds by casting Sundering Growth on the Twinning Staff, and makes a token copy of the Rhino. He also casts a Naya Charm to kill the Cobra. He then blocks the plant token with the Rhino token, and after that, Dominic passes. Shane's turn has him drawing and casting a Consecrated Sphinx, making a 1/1 Spirit token copy with Donal. Without a land drop though, he just passes, and at the end of turn, David once more activates his Sensei's Divining Top, rearranging his top 3. David draws, and Shane draws 4 cards from his Sphinxes. David then moves to his main phase and plays a Terramorphic Expanse, and down ticks Samut to buff a Rhino and scry 1 to the bottom. Moving to combat, he swings the 6/5 Rhino at Dominic, who blocks with Phylath. After that, he cracks the Terramorphic Expanse and passes to Chris. Chris draws, with Shane drawing 4. Chris then plays an island and taps Kalamax to the Springleaf Drum, and then casts an Eternal Witness, returning Snap to hand. He then passes turn. Dominic draws, and Shane draws 4. Dominic then plays an Emerald Medallion to join his Ruby one, and recasts Phylath, making 12 plant tokens this time, and passes back to Shane. Shane sadly only gets to draw 1 card on his turn, and he plays an island. He then casts a Thought Vessel to keep his cards around, followed by a Panharmonicon. He then ships the turn, which has David once more, activating the top. David draws, and Shane draws 4. David then plays a Grux Pack Leader and then a Plains for turn, but with nothing else, passes. Chris draws, and Shane draws 4. Chris then taps Kalamax to the Springleaf Drum to help cast a Gruul Signet, and he passes to Dominic. Dominic draws, and Shane draws another 4. He plays a Fabled Passage and puts 4 more +1/+1 counters onto his plant token. Moving to combat, he swings 8 at Shane, who responds with a Rapid Hybridization, taking 1 from the Colosseum. This kills the attacking creature, and with his attack blunted, Dominic passes. Shane draws his 13th card for this turn cycle and plays an island. He casts a Sky Diamond and passes, with David once more using his top to hopefully find an answer. David draws, and Shane draws 4. David plays a Gargoyle Castle as his land for turn, and spins the top again, hoping to find a board wipe. With no good attacks though, he does pass, and at the end of turn, Chris casts a Magnus Opus, which is copied, dealing 8 to Dominic and making 2 4/4s, then drawing 4 and tapping Phylath, both of the Sphinxes, and a Rhino token. Shane gets to draw a total of 16 cards from the Sphinx's triggers, and we then move to Chris's turn. Chris draws, and suspiciously Shane decides to not draw 4. Chris then taps Kalamax to the drum to help cast Harrow, and is copied, which lets him go and grab 4 basics to put into play untapped. Chris follows it up with a Mountain for turn, and then Lightning Greaves, putting them onto his commander. After that, he passes. Dominic draws, and Shane once more skips his Sphinx's triggers. For combat, Dominic swings Phylath at Chris and the 3/3 Frog at Shane. Shane flashes in a Dream Eater before blocks, making a copy of it and bouncing the Frog and Ghired. Chris then chumps the Eternal Witness, while Shane surveils 4 twice, and after that, Dominic passes. Shane draws and casts a Soul Ring. He then plays an island, and once that's done, casts Peregrine Drake, making a copy. David responds by activating a Sensei Divining Top, but finds nothing, and Shane makes a ton of mana off the 2 Drakes and the Panharmonicon. Shane then casts a Shrieking Drake, and Chris tries to interact with Snap, but unfortunately it's not going to break the loop though. The Shrieking Drake is able to bounce itself and a Peregrine Drake as it enters, allowing Shane to make infinite mana. He then uses it to cast an infinitely large Stroke of Genius on David. Chris attempts to deflecting swat it back to Shane, but Shane has Negate in hand. David gets drawn out, and Shane uses the rest of his mana to cast a Blue Sun Zenith for the rest of his deck, and then uses 2 cantrips to redraw it and draw out Chris and Dominic and win the game. Game review time. So, in the table's defense, I think this was probably one of the first times that they'd seen a Donal deck, let alone a Donal combo. I do think that probably as soon as Shane resolved 2 Consecrated Sphinxes, the target should have firmly been placed on him, but I wasn't at the game, so it's hard to say what was going on. David's Ghired deck actually is pushing me further into making the deck from Tristani. I like the fact that I don't have to pay mana or tap it, but it does have to be in combat, so that is a deterrent, but with Reconnaissance that's probably not that big of a deal. Chris's Kalamax deck is a typical Timur Spellslinger deck, but I was pretty impressed to see him play Magnus Opus, although his choice of targets were a bit peculiar, considering he could have at least taken out one of the Consecrated Sphinxes before drawing cards. I think Dom's Phylath deck came out of the gates a little bit too strong, and he became the main enemy, at least for David anyway. He did play Surge of Victory, which is one of the cards that I've really wanted to try in the past, and I just love how the card works. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.